Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Street Fighter Podcast. My name is Justin, and joining me, as always, is Roddy, and this time, Elon. As a reminder, you can listen to this podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, and on YouTube. And if you enjoy the show, let us know by giving a thumbs up, a like, subscribe to the channel, share it around, that sort of thing. Let us know that you like the podcast, and we'll keep making it.
Wait, they can give us a thumbs up? Is it on Facebook?
Well, you can give a thumbs up on YouTube.
Oh, what about SoundCloud? SoundCloud has like a
SoundCloud
heart.
has like a heart, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So if you're
do
listening,
all of those things.
yeah, if you're listening to it,
whatever those things are.
Yeah, like
Show the podcast
give us
some love.
$1. You know.
Give us $1.
Don't give us any money. But okay,
Do we need to set up a Patreon?
No, I just want $1. But anyway,
this podcast is this particular episode is gonna be
Sponsored by nothing.
sponsored by nothing. So we're gonna be discussing the stigma of Street Fighter V.
Not the stigmata.
No,
Something very
so.
different.
How do I really want to approach this? Because you guys didn't. I made notes on this, and I guess everything kind of stems from we're gonna like the title of the episode is gonna be Esports and Online Negativity. I already planned it out, and knowing that that's generally what it's gonna be about, we'll start with the esports side of it first, because I feel like this is going to kind of tread into how this makes sense with online negativity. But it started with the Capcom's COO message that we all kind of read. Roddy, do you have it up?
I don't. I was about to pull it up, though.
Okay, so I'll let Roddy pull it up. Correct me if any of this is wrong, but the basis is that Capcom seems like they're doubling down on the esports side of things for the next, can be up to 20 years.
Yeah, he specifically called out 20 years. This is Haruhito Tsujimoto.
dang,
Okay.
that's gonna be 2040. That feels like it's like too far away. Like it doesn't even feel like it's a real thing.
No, it's funny too. I don't think it. Okay, well, because you brought up something where you wanted to address each title, right?
Yeah, I wanted to. So there's a couple of ways that we could look at Capcom's approach to how they'll approach. Well, I've used approach a couple times. Capcom's approach to enforcing their will on the esports market as it applies to each game or each business unit, depending on how they want to drive it, or if the company as a whole is just going to have a mission statement for this going forward, and everyone will have to adhere to it. There could be any number of processes, and it doesn't. Tsujimoto doesn't say how they approach this or how they're going to approach it. He just says they're fully engaging the esports market, and that they're focused not only on 2 to 3 year short-term activities, but then those that extend 5, 10, and even 20 years out. So apparently they already have some kind of plan in place internally. They're obviously not going to let on all of that, but it remains to be seen how that'll impact Monster Hunter. I guess not Monster Hunter. He said esports specifically. So Street Fighter. What other esports titles do they have? Is that it?
Yeah, I mean,
any of the fighting games, really. Like any fighting game that they make in the future will be esports.
I don't want to try to pull stuff out of what he's saying as far as like what he actually means, but the term, or not term, but I guess the words were used, leveraging our Street Fighter brand. So I don't want that to mean that, Marvel versus Capcom wouldn't do as well, as an example, or like they're just abandoning, Marvel versus Capcom. But it's very clear.
It would be stupid of them to put out a statement that says anything about being 20 years into the future and not having Marvel versus Capcom as a part of that plan.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Even if they take
20 years.
Even if they take a 10-year hiatus, that game will come back. But I don't think they're going to take a 10-year hiatus. I think the sting, the bite of Infinite is already real. It's already been realized. It's already been written down in their tax statements.
Sure.
So they've got to make something happen with that license.
Yeah.
Or they're going to lose it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I was like,
Good.
They're in danger of losing it.
Do we know how that works? Do they still have the license for that, or
They
like
have to be granted the license.
Okay, and how long does the license normally
Don't know
last?
that.
That's just stuff between Capcom and Disney.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Okay, just because like.
I don't even know if anybody in the public knows that. It might be internal information.
Yeah, just because like I'm trying to think like if they still have the license for it, then it doesn't make sense for them not to do anything with it, right? Because like
yes,
it's a
money.
That's a license that carries some weight.
I was just kind of bringing it up when just what I know based on what was said, which is leveraging the Street Fighter brand, which does kind of allude to a Street Fighter 6 or Street Fighter 7. I don't want to speak.
It'd be dumb of them not to.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Capcom, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking, whether it's the next Street Fighter or Street Fighter 7 or 5 Street Fighters in the future, I feel like one of their objectives might be to create a Street Fighter that's like the one that they can just, run their, like the melee of the Street Fighter series, where it's like, it's this one, all we need to do is update this one game. Like,
that's what they tried to do with 5.
Yeah, well, I don't think that really worked, but, or maybe that's a frightening thing, right? Like, what if 5 is that game?
5 is that game right now.
Well, we know,
but they're not going to do that 10 years in the future. They're not going to carry 5 on. For
we know that
years.
It's probably at least going to be up to
2020.
Yeah.
So next year.
So they probably have one more season in them left.
I think they have this season. I think that's it. They said up to 2020, right? They didn't say through.
Oh, it is 2019. I still think it's 2018.
Yeah. So we might have just this season remaining.
It
depends on their interpretation.
Yeah, and you know what? It also does lend an explanation to the fact that they changed everything with how they're doing the season pass and all that shit this year. I apologize for cursing.
I put the clean lyrics on the on the podcast, but now I have to change it back to
well, I mean, honestly, the way I use that word is not a curse word according to the FCC, so I think we're okay. And I'm not even kidding.
Shout outs to my Negans.
You need to bleep that. You need to bleep that, even though it's not.
I feel like if you bleep it, it'll just make it worse.
Oh yeah.
But what I'm saying is,
it's pizza time. Bleep that.
I don't remember what I was saying now.
Something about the plan. We're professionals here.
I don't remember. We started talking about.
There's 2 bulleted sections I have here, which each have like a subsection beneath it. There's negativity among Street Fighter players, which
regarding.
Well, we'll get to that because like if I turn this, if you look at it.
Oh no, I don't need to look at it.
I'm just saying like it's just it's a bulleted section and then it kind of has its own subsections in it.
It's like an outline inside an outline.
Yeah, so it's negativity among Street Fighter players. We're going to get to that one because coming off of this whole, the COO's message and up through 2020 or up till 2020, I want to jump to this point here, which talks about
the support of Street Fighter 5 up to 2020.
Yeah, so this is generally a question, but it says what I have written here is, will Capcom prioritize Street Fighter 6 as? And then there's 3 things that I kind of outlined here. So the first one is an outstanding game that casual players can enjoy with an emphasis on esports for career-focused players. Number 2, a passable or MVP game for casual players with an outstanding emphasis on esports for career-focused players. Or number 3, which is both, which would be an outstanding base video game experience alongside an outstanding esports scene. Now, the tricky thing is that 3 is obviously the one that I think everybody would want, right? You would want an outstanding video game that anybody can play, but then for those who are career-focused and want to pursue it as a professional, there's this booming, esports scene that you can jump into at any point by just going to a tournament. That, I think, is very unlikely. You're going to get number 3.
What do you mean by MVP game?
So MVP is minimum
viable product.
Minimum viable product, which is essentially
That's how Street Fighter 5 launched. We don't want to see that again.
Well, a lot of AAA companies are doing that, and something that Roddy and I have kind of been texting about maybe the past couple weeks is just this idea of these games coming out in these like awful states or MVPs where they're just like, well, people will buy it, and then it may crash your PS4. Oh, you may have to like wait 6 months for the real content to come out. But
you mean like Anthem?
Yeah. Although, and now I was actually going to bring that up. It's finally getting to the point where the consumer is having a say about games that are launched like that by not buying it. Right?
Yeah,
Anthem is a great example. What was the other? Fallout 76 is another unbelievable example of exactly that.
Yeah, I mean, we've got these Bethesda games. You've got pretty much anything that Activision or EA touch. Like, it's getting more and more out there that anything that those 3 companies are kind of associated with are like, hey, don't buy it because of microtransactions, loot boxes, whatever the case is, But,
especially when you have a track record of something like, usually Activision games will go from being paid up front to like super cheap, but with in-game mini microtransactions, and then free to play a year later with nothing but microtransactions, which is what I have a feeling Anthem is going to do.
Well, in Street Fighter 5 has its, it's got its loot boxes. I mean, you guys are going to have to kind of keep me in check here because I don't play the game. Is Fighting Chance not that?
Yeah, it is.
It is. Okay. And what does it actually give you? It gives you like stuff for survival mode, and then sometimes it gives you a costume.
Yeah, items for survival mode with the possibility of a costume. In most cases.
Does it do anything else?
I don't think so.
Does it give you like titles or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I guess you could get backgrounds and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like you open it up and there's stuff in there, like a loot box. Like, hey, here's 5 things.
Yeah.
That you may or may not want. But
it'll give you items for the background of your dojo as well.
So something that we've been talking about is like, Capcom.
So that's kind of neat.
Capcom has been this leader with regards to Street Fighter, 4 and now 5. But they're still also kind of following what the industry is doing. And I remember I almost tweeted out the other day where I was just like, man, Street Fighter 6 is going to be the best Street Fighter game of all time because, you can see exactly all the issues that are wrong with Street Fighter 5, and all they have to do is just not do that, and we're good. And then Dead or Alive comes out, and it's got this, like, crazy... It's got its own season pass issues that, had been going on since Dead or Alive 5, Dead or Alive 6. And
I don't think that it's a given that the development of any game that comes next, if it's going to be on the next generation PlayStation or whatever, it's not necessarily a given that those things that went wrong with the previous game will have been corrected. They will maybe they'll have learned their lessons, but it's highly possible they could repeat those things because development goes the way it goes.
It's true.
You look like you want to say something real bad.
When you said that, both Justin and I were like...
Well, I was just thinking about, I don't want to linger too much on other video games that aren't, especially Street Fighter, but, we've seen, I was thinking about Mass Effect, where people had a huge issue with Mass Effect 3.
Oh, yeah?
To the point where its ending got rewritten.
Yeah.
And then the next Mass Effect game comes out, and it's trash. And then the next BioWare game comes out, and it's being ripped apart.
And here's the thing, I think...
good reason for that.
You know my theory, that, that's... The Mass Effect 3 thing is what caused,
I forgot you're the Mass Effect guy.
Yeah, let me put my tinfoil hat on. I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on.
I'll tell you if you're right.
I think the openness to hatred in the internet when it comes to the gaming industry with, bothering developers and bothering people who make video games started with Mass Effect 3 because people bitched about it so much, and then finally, the people behind the game caved. So everyone kind of looked at each other and were like, wait a second, they heard us? Oh, no.
Yeah. Also, social media has been moving in that direction anyway, where it's like people will complain about something and then companies will change it. But going back to this question, because I want to wrap up this point, there's only really kind of 4. And I know that if you're listening to it, you might not have fully heard or understood what I was saying a little bit earlier. But as far as what Street Fighter 6 could look like as a product of the 3, I think the third one, which is an outstanding video game for casual players and a fantastic esports focused game, is probably not going to happen. So it really kind of comes down between 1 and 2, which is something that is outstanding for the casual players with a CPT or an esports that's kind of more or less like it is now, maybe a little bit better, or something that's the opposite, where the game is very, very passable, it barely works. But hey, we've got $2 million in CPT money.
I think
so it's this huge emphasis on esports, whereas the base product just isn't that good.
I think there's going to be one deciding factor that's going to determine that, and it's going to be the buy-in price.
Okay.
If the game is free to play, then I think we're going to have a minimum viable product game.
Okay. Good point.
Sure.
Good point.
I can see that.
If
doesn't cost me no money.
Yeah. And part of me does want to see it go in that direction.
I don't think we should ever see Street Fighter go that direction.
Dude, look at Rising Thunder.
Look at Killer Instinct.
Killer Instinct was also plagued by being on the Xbox One.
What about Puzzle Fighter, y'all? Puzzle Fighter was great. I liked it.
And Killer Instinct was a good game.
It is a good game.
It still is a good game.
It's an amazing game. It's one of my favorites.
And yet no one plays it.
Yes,
well, not enough people play it.
And it was plagued by the exclusivity thing with Microsoft.
Which surprisingly should have plagued Street Fighter V and didn't. It still survived.
Well, it wasn't an exclusivity thing because it was on the PlayStation or on Steam. And that's the thing,
That's still pretty exclusive. PC or PS4?
Yeah.
You get no other system, no other console.
Yeah, especially because the way the Xbox One launched was such a negative experience to Microsoft, right? You remember all that drama.
Oh, yeah, dude.
That's why I think... And when you look at it, Killer Instinct, when that was happening, was one of the most played games by Xbox One owners.
I played it. I played it at that time, when it came out.
Yeah, it was one of the most played games. And I don't think it started free to play. I think it was actually a base game.
thought it started free to play.
And then once Iron Galaxy took over, I believe
they rolled it into
yeah,
free-to-play?
because it was Double Helix, I think, that first developed it. But either way, my point is, in order for Street Fighter to grow as an esport, as it is, for more people to join in on the movement. I'm using air quotes a lot for those of you listening at home.
I can hear it.
The buy-in price has to be lower. $60 is a shit ton of money.
$60 is too much for what it eventually gets to be. What includes free to play elements. It already includes free to play elements.
And this is my personal feeling. I think
we
fighting
talked about this point specifically.
Yeah, I think a fighting game
We're just like hamsters on a wheel. We're going to talk about the same stuff forever.
Yeah, I think a fighting game should not cost $60 unless it's something that's unbelievable that we've never seen before. And here's why. Compared to other games, fighting games are going to be repetitive as hell. Because it's just X amount of characters and you're just fighting one other person, right? There's no change from that experience.
Okay.
Now, for us who do play fighting games and understand like the intricacies that go into learning a fighting game and like how to get better at a fighting game, we see the value in it. But somebody who's like, oh, look, a Mortal Kombat, or oh, look, a Street Fighter, all they're going to see is, oh, it's just, you fight your friends, and that's it.
Yeah.
So at the end of the line, I think $60 for a fighting game is not worth it unless there's something big.
Because I want to kind of go around the table here. As far as what you think, do you think that the next Street Fighter game, Street Fighter 6, that I know you're saying that the buy-in price has to be lower, but you're thinking that it might end up being more of like an MVP product?
I don't want it to. I would love to see it. I would love to see a full-fledged game, an amazing game where everyone's like, "Holy shit, best Street Fighter ever!"
But based on what we've been experiencing, let's take the last 7 years of Street Fighter 4. We're going to take the last 3 years of Street Fighter 5.
Has it only been 3 years since it launched?
Well, 2016.
It came out in 2015-ish, I think.
Street Fighter 5?
Yeah. Came out like mid-2015.
It got announced in 2015.
Okay, you're right. The beta was in 2015.
I think it came out February 2016.
Okay, then let me answer your question with another question. Are we going to take the shakeup of personnel at Capcom into account as well?
Which shakeup?
Andy Wong is no longer there. John D is no longer there.
Really?
He said it. All right, go ahead.
He's no longer there, so it's okay. Mike Martin, who used to
he's still at Capcom. He's just moved to BizDev.
He got John D's spot.
Oh.
He's the big director for business development. So I think with those shakeups, it's one of those things that remains to be seen.
I mean, Matt Dahlgren isn't there. Peter Rosas isn't there. I mean, pretty much anybody that was on the 2015 panel for Street Fighter that was talking about it, they're no longer there.
Yeah, so taking that into account, I could see it going both ways.
Okay.
So
wait.
What's your thoughts, Rob?
So, while that may have some effect, realize that those are all North American hires,
right?
And they will have potentially next to no input. Until when it comes to time to test gameplay elements tuning elements of gameplay. So after the game's pretty much already been developed and the direction of gameplay has been decided. That's all Capcom Japan, and they're going to take care of it. There I am going with the air quotes.
Absolutely.
Now the other thing too is Ono's title has also changed.
Is he no longer? I thought he was like head of Street Fighter or something like that.
Is he?
I don't know. What did he?
I know his title changed. But back to my point.
I'll look it up.
Wasn't Peter Rosas like the combat designer or something like that?
At one point, he was producer.
Yeah, he was a producer.
So you can see it going both ways.
Yeah, it remains to be seen who's the new leadership at Capcom USA and how they're gonna play with Capcom
Maybe
Japan.
it'll be the Monster Hunter guy. Roddy, what do you think between kind of the two options that we're looking at? I always hate to break things out into twos, but I feel like it's gonna either be one or the other. Yeah.
I would love a free-to-play game that's amazing for everybody. Okay. That's what I want. I want number 3.
Well, as Roddy's looking that up, because I do want to move off of this point soon. My perspective is based on what I've been seeing, and I'm following other AAA publishers and developers. I feel like what's most likely going to happen is that we're going to get a MVP, minimum viable product Street Fighter game that is barely going to work, but it's going to have this phenomenal esports scene that you're going to have to kind of deal with the game because at the end of the road, there's this esports scene that you can make a lot of money from if you can get into the top 8 or whatever. Yeah. That's what I honestly think is going to happen. So my option is, I believe it's going to most likely be option 2.
Yeah, and that's what I think it's so too. But I would really love to see a 1 or a 3, to be honest.
I believe that Infinite and Street Fighter V have bit Capcom enough. Capcom Japan, they've bit them enough in the butt. Because you see them kind of moving towards this more complete product with Street Fighter V Arcade actually having a location test, which it's supposed to happen soon, I think.
I think
the arcade
in Japan.
Edition.
Is it what?
I think it's coming out the day before final round.
Okay.
I read an article recently.
I don't know.
Is there
I don't know.
An update right before final round then?
It's potentially, but I mean that it doesn't have to be given just because the location test is happening.
Yeah.
But I think that because we see that kind of step that Capcom's taking to make Street Fighter a more universally accepted fighting game in Japan, that what we're going to see with Street Fighter 6, if and when it comes out, is it will be a more complete product. I think that they have learned their lesson. They're going to create an arcade product first, something that can be competitive, that is probably a little bit more difficult to learn, with characters that have simpler inputs.
So I feel like I should throw like the Will Ferrell like gif at him, where I'm just like, I don't believe you. It's mainly because it's one of the few times I think we're just going to disagree on this point, because my thing is I'd like that to be the case, but I feel like there's other more successful companies than Capcom that is still doing this, that are still partaking in the same mistakes over and over, and they're still putting out the same kind of games. And I feel like the industry is just going to follow.
Red Dead Redemption 2, another great example.
Yep.
So also, I do want to point out one more thing too. I think the COO of Capcom USA changed as well last year.
Honestly, I don't pay that close attention to what happens.
It's when I was looking for the Capcom Japan COO's statement was when I saw that. So again, there's a lot of like personnel changes in the behind the scenes. So it's to be seen.
According to this, this is a Event Hub's article that came out, I think, the same time that Ono switched jobs here. It was from September 8th of last year, 2018. And it was, he was the head of the division that houses Capcom's fighting games. That is now Ryozo Tsujimoto. He was the one who was at the helm of Monster Hunter. He was the producer of Monster Hunter.
He's Monster Hunter guy. That's how I know him.
Yeah.
So
but he's the one who now heads that division. So Ono may just be on whatever the game is. He might just be the producer of Street Fighter game X, whatever it may be.
This is going to be kind of the meat. I feel like this might take us all the way to the end of the podcast, but this is the main thing, right? The negativity among Street Fighter players. And I'm going to really try to keep myself in check with regards to like how I discuss this, only because I feel like it can spiral out of control. We could talk for hours about it. So I wrote down about 6 things that I feel I've noticed both in depth and at a glance, having been away from Street Fighter V, that are like the main things that you're going to hear about at any given point when it comes to Street Fighter players, specifically Street Fighter players. And number 1, lack of communication and news, which directly extends to character announcements, releases, balance changes, community requested feedback going unaddressed. That is all number 1.
That's a big one.
That's a big one. That's why it's number 1.
It's a big one.
Number 2, the game being unexciting to watch on a higher competitive level. I get that there are people who like watching the game. I'm not saying nobody likes watching the game, but it's
a complaint.
It is definitely something that you hear a lot about. That it's just and I wanted to make sure that word was selected carefully. Like I said, unexciting. So I don't want to say it's like, that it wasn't interesting to watch. It is interesting to watch, but unexciting. Like it just doesn't it's not as hype inducing as I feel like previous Street Fighter games have been. Or from what people will say about the game. Number 3, the nature of social media allows negativity to have a platform that can appear to be the overwhelming majority opinion. So you can take 50 people all shout Street Fighter V sucks, and that could look like that's the common opinion of the game because negativity is louder than positivity. We all know that. Number 4, mimicking AAA gaming industry trends like gaming as a service. Nobody booed in 2015 when Capcom said they were going to treat Street Fighter V as a service. You better believe that if they say they're going to treat Street Fighter 6 as a gaming service, it's going to be like, well, thanks for telling us which game not to buy.
Well, there's a reason for that nobody booed in 2015. It's because we hadn't seen Street Fighter as a service.
Right.
So we didn't know what to
But now we
expect.
have all these games that have been Star Wars has been treated as a service.
Yeah.
Anthem has been treated as a service. Bungie, we've seen these games. Number 5, loot boxes, microtransactions, and I have in parentheses here, paid DLC that feels omitted from the rest of the game to be sold later. Like, there's a difference between something like Spider-Man, right, or something like Monster Hunter, where you're like, oh, they made you, even if they did cut it from the game, it doesn't feel like it's like, oh, let's take this like 15% of the game and then sell it later. Whereas there's stuff in Street Fighter that just didn't work when the game came out. There's
Or it just wasn't present.
Yeah, it wasn't there, and so it's like MVP, right? The minimum viable product, something that you intentionally look as though you're developing along the way. And then I think 6 here is this is kind of a weird one because I know that this is going to step on a lot of people's toes. I feel it's a counterpoint to online negativity, and I have in quotes someone I read this in one of the different Reddit threads, which was if you went to more offline events and tournaments, you would see that people are more positive, and that to me is somewhat of a no-brainer. Of course, like I wouldn't travel and spend money for a hotel and spend money for Uber and food and drive me up to the airport and dealing with delays, with flights, only to tell people that game was awful when I got there.
Yep.
Right? So of course, wherever you're going, they're going to be like, yeah, this is great. When we went to DreamHack, like how many people are you going to find at DreamHack Austin that are getting ready to play Street Fighter? It's like, God, this game is trash.
Pros.
You sure?
But they're also flying on someone else's dime.
Yeah.
The general.
I told Elon I have a new name for pros now. They're not pros, they're not top players. To me, I'm calling them career-focused players. That's their new name.
CFPs.
I almost said something else that would have been funny, but we'll save that for later.
But so I don't know if we really
It's a
want
family-friendly podcast.
I don't know if we really want to comment too much on any of those points, or if you guys want to look at them. But those are the 6 things that I feel like no matter what time you're looking at Street Fighter, and even at a time now, from what I've heard, it's a decent game now. It's like you're still going to hear mostly those 6 things. Not all of them all the time, but at any given point, you're going to see those 6 things. And last thing I want to say before I let you guys get a word in here is that I do have in the description of the podcast, I think 3, I'll have to double check, but I think it's 3 or 4 Reddit pages where it's really, tired of Street Fighter hate. Why do people hate Street Fighter 5? They're kind of more or less the same thing. And it's, it could be also that the negative voices are a little bit louder than the positive ones because the game is okay.
Yeah,
so.
and I think that's what the case is. I just want to tackle the social media point.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
This applies to all 3 of us. How many times have you been playing any game, any fighting game, and you just get pissed and you have to walk away for a little bit?
Sure. Yeah.
Often.
Now, instead of walking away, people go on Twitter and it's like, oh, this game sucks. And then they go back to playing like a couple hours later, right?
Yeah.
So as much as I hate that I'm saying this, or like I don't think I know a better way to put this, like I don't think social media complaints are I don't think they're viable. Just because of that, right? It's the people who are writing shit about Street Fighter 5 are probably the people who are playing it. They get mad once and then like tweet something out and then go back to playing the game and then they get mad again and then tweet another thing
Shout outs to MDZ Jimmy. But go ahead.
Does he do that?
Why?
Oh no, he was. It's the one person I think about where he was just like he made this not long, but he made this video being like, I'm not going to play Street Fighter ranked anymore. I'm never going to do it.
Oh yeah.
And then dude got bodied by I'm Still the Daddy. Like,
Yeah.
Whatever. Go ahead. Continue.
But yeah, and much like we were discussing, I don't know if we were on recording or not at this point. Everything's blurring together. But when you say something on social media, there's no consequence, right? So people feel as though they can say anything, and it's a platform that someone else is going to see it, and they're either going to agree or disagree, and then it's like social media is like the DayZ of humans. Like, if you remember DayZ when it first came out, like, people were just being assholes to each other. And that's what social media is now, I think. And it's because of that lack of face-to-face, like, consequence, cause and effect occurrence that happens on a face-to-face conversation. So that's why I think the negativity outweighs the positivity there, is because of everything I just said.
Rod, do you have any thoughts?
I was just curious to see what the stats looked like for Steam for Street Fighter 5. And it looks like it's been really consistent ever since 2016. It's at the very least had about 1,600 players per day, 1,600 unique players every day. And then it's got bumps that go up.
That probably they probably coincide with like Capcom Cups and
probably
Evo
and
announcements.
releases of characters and stuff like that. But it's just interesting to see how consistent it's been.
Mm-hmm.
There is a solid player base. While it may not be large, especially on Steam, but I bet that we would see similar numbers on PS4.
Yeah, I think that there are. I mean, the numbers on PS4 are definitely going to be larger.
And I think that, like, looking at something like, the reason I looked this up was I was curious if the player base had dwindled because of all the negativity, because there's a lot and it's very loud, and that's a point that we've already made.
Mm-hmm.
But that apparently hasn't affected this player base. It's still there. They're still very consistent. There's consistently a set of people who will just keep going back to Street Fighter V. And that's fine. That's actually good. That's great, because that means the game lives on, and that means that Capcom lives to make another game. Or at least they know that they're still interested in the Street Fighter franchise, that they can carry that data forward and say, hey, look, this is where we are now. Look at the ramp that we had when we went from Street Fighter, 3 to 4.
Sure. I mean, the analytics, the analytics are very clear when you bring that stuff to meetings.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I wanted to point out that, like, I know I'm in the middle when it comes to a lot of, like, topics that we pick, but a big thing is, like, I'm on neither side. I don't really think that, like, the game is awful, but I don't think it's like a really good Street Fighter game either. Mm-hmm. So, you know,
it launched poorly. Everybody knows that, but they stuck with it. Capcom stuck with it and made the game better. They absolutely made it a passable Street Fighter game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not.
Yep, you don't have a second chance to make a first impression,
which is what stung so many people, so many players, especially those who were so amped up about Street Fighter 4's however many years, 7 years of Evos and tournaments, national and regional tournaments, and then the brand new at the time CPT.
Yeah, you know what I would be interested to see as far as analytics? Not only the PlayStation player base, but I would love to see the numbers when they had that free weekend. Remember, recently they had.
I thought they've done a couple of those, maybe a few.
They've done at least a couple of them.
The
most recent one was over CPT weekend, right?
Yeah, they had it from Friday to Monday.
You know, when we were talking about
Capcom Cup, sorry, not CPT.
I mentioned a little bit earlier is number 4 for negativity among Street Fighter players, mimicking AAA gaming industry trends. Now, in the example that I picked gaming as a service, right? But, I mean, how many times did we mention on this podcast, Roddy, like, just do what Hearthstone does. Just do what Overwatch does.
Yeah, we've said that a lot.
You know, and you know, maybe sometimes, you know, when we say do what these other companies do, we're not saying...
We've been more specific than that, but yeah.
It's like that meme where it's just like, hey, can I copy your homework? It's like, okay, but don't change it to... You got to change it
so it looks
exactly
different.
The same.
Yeah.
You know, it's like one of those things like, okay, when we say, you know, copy Overwatch, you don't mean like take the loot boxes and turn Street Fighter into a battle royale. You know?
Yeah.
Although that'd be neat. Just running around, all of a sudden it's like, fight. Okay.
That's basically what you get for Dragon Ball
Z. That's an interesting question that I was thinking about with like Apex Legends, and you have something like, you know, Fortnite. I mean, going back to the idea of a Street Fighter game that's for casuals or something that focuses on esports. I mean, I'm curious how much people would want or care that Street Fighter 6 doesn't have a story mode. And now we know people care about not having an arcade mode.
Arcade mode, yeah.
But bear with me on this. No story mode. No arcade mode. It's literally boot up, matchmaking.
People would care.
Casual or ranked.
Yeah,
and
people
then
would
you
care.
just go in. Now, I haven't played these other games.
There was enough crap given that they had to make an arcade edition of Street Fighter V. Come on.
I know.
And to that point as well, I cannot tell you how many times I've spoken to someone who is not a competitive fighting game player or even understands that there is a competitive side to fighting games say, oh, Street Fighter V sucks. It didn't launch with a story mode. Or like there's people who actually care.
Mode or story mode?
Story mode. It didn't launch like the story mode.
Yeah, no, I know. It didn't launch with either of those.
Yeah. So there are people who play things for the story and they give a damn about the lore and everything, which is like fine and it's cool. And again, it goes back to my point about how the buy-in price for fighting games are too high unless there's something ridiculous. So, like, for example, on the NRS side of things, the way they have kind of, like, trailblazed how to tell a story via fighting game is very interesting. And all of the extra modes that they used to have in their games before Mortal Kombat 9, like, they used to have like, a Mario Kart racing thing in Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I actually met really good friends through that. And they had like puzzle combat and like all this other stuff. It was awesome. It was amazing.
Was that MK9 that just it was off the rails and had all this crazy stuff?
No, MK9 was where they brought it back.
Oh, that's right. They went back to the original story.
Yeah, and the way they tell the story in MK9 is amazing, and the way they have like the crypt thing is cool because like you unlock stuff by like exploring
I
shenanigans.
thought that crypt first appeared in MK5.
Maybe it did. I don't know, but I still like it.
Yeah, no, it was still cool.
This is an MK5.
Yeah, it was on the original Xbox, I think.
I thought they went 1, 2, 3,
4
Ultimate,
Deadly
4.
Alliance.
No, there was a 5.
There was a numbered 5.
Yeah, it was like a big V with blades coming off of the side.
I thought that was Deadly Alliance.
Yeah, I thought that was Deadly
I mean, it
Alliance
might have
too.
been Deadly Alliance, but it's still MK5.
Okay, well, anyway. Yeah, so the way that I think they're going to justify that buy-in for people to buy the actual game is to have a good story mode and all of the supplemental content that for people who don't you clicked away from it.
No.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that. Oh, Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance.
Yeah, but look, you see the big V with blades in the back of it?
V's are for
I
jerks.
guess I guess just for marketing's sake, when I was a kid, I never thought of it as Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
5.
I just knew it as
But
Deadly
anyway,
Alliance.
you're right. It is the fifth Mortal
way
Kombat.
back in 2002.
But again, like going back to my earlier point, where fighting games tend to get repetitive for people who don't play it like we do, they need more, right? And they need to justify
that changes the MVP.
Yes,
because you can't market to solely competitive tournament players.
No,
we're too small of a niche of people.
But
I don't really mean.
And here's the thing: if you are going to have like a free to play or like a very minimum buy-in game for an MVP, Street Fighter 6, then your focus does have to be on the competitive side, right? Because you have to make money at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So
you have to encourage.
You can't just do this costume thing. I'm sure that's working, but it can't be. It wouldn't work if it was
right.
free.
They wouldn't keep doing it if it wasn't working.
Well, no, I'm saying that you couldn't do it as well if it was free.
Right. So
I think you could do it better if it was free.
You're right.
Probably.
I bought some Ryu costumes in Puzzle Fighter. I did it.
But
I haven't spent any money on this game. I'll push $2 into it.
But and I think that now that I'm thinking about this, it kind of makes sense to what the COO said and what we were talking about earlier. Having a game that is with minimum buy-in and minimum content, as it were, geared towards esports, but with the goal of getting the casual player to think of fighting games as an esport.
Yeah, that's
right.
the plan. That's
So-
got to be. That's the
So,
plan.
like that, you have a perfect, well, not necessarily a perfect, but you have a pretty good formula, right? Where it's free buy-in. You don't have to pay much money, if at all. You're, like, people are going to at least try it, right? Because it's free. Like, what do you have to lose? Except for, like, maybe a couple minutes. And it's a great way to funnel people into the competitive side of things. It's like, you don't have to, look, it's exactly the League of Legends thing.
I know. It's the same as if Overwatch was free to play.
You couldn't bitch about netcode if the game was free.
You can still bitch about anything.
I guess
yeah.
You could,
But
you could bitch about it, especially if the game was free, because then that's the only mode that you would have to play, right? Is online versus other people. If it was
or
bad,
offline
you couldn't play
with other people.
No,
Well,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
if you get a bunch of free to play players on this game, all they're gonna want to do is play online.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, and I think
It's got to be clean,
yeah,
like your water.
and I think that's what might happen is we're gonna get close to free to play Street Fighter 6 with the goal of getting.
Well, let me
casuals
say
into
this
the
because
esports scene.
Roddy, since you didn't read the notes but the email, I want to mention some.
Is that Drake that does that?
Yeah, that's the meme. Yeah,
I think that's gonna happen.
that's the meme. So I want to rattle off my last list here. I don't know if these lists are annoying to rattle off to listen to because I know you can't see them. You know, and I speak quick enough to where you might not truly listen to what I'm saying.
So folks who are just listening, you need to listen to the overlays.
Well, no, I'm just going to say it a little bit slower. So
Say it faster.
So I have this bullet.
Wait! Before you move on, can I just rattle off the statistic that I found?
Go for it. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
during CPT, because you had asked, the average number of daily players went up 3 times. So it went from about 1,600 to over 6,000.
Yeah. See the power of
16
free
to
to play.
2. So it was between 16 and 2,000, up to 6,000.
What you were saying? That was during the free weekend?
Yeah, during the
Whoa.
Capcom
Yep.
Capcom.
That's what I'm
Cup.
saying, man.
Okay. Yeah,
So we went from a range of 16,000 or 1,600 to 2,000 players up to above 6,000.
Was that for the duration of the weekend, or was it just like the first day?
That's actually the second day. I can't really tell. Like the graph only shows me the one day.
Okay.
And that's just on Steam.
Yeah, but
because that was the only place it was free to play.
but that's what I'm
right?
saying, man.
Or was it free on PS4?
It was free on PS4
I think it
too.
was.
Oh, okay, yeah, I bet we'd see a similar bump there.
The power of minimum buy-in is a powerful one.
Maybe.
So I kind of want to rattle off these.
It doesn't work for every game type.
Yeah,
No.
these bulleted points. But so I have this section here about psychology, and what I was essentially outlining was I have 7 bulleted points. I think there's 7 in there, but there's 7 where I kind of outlined what I thought the marks were of a good game. Like these are things that if most of these are yes, if a significant portion of these 7 are yes, then you have a great video game. So
is it just video games in general or fighting games?
It's technically video games, just across the board.
Okay.
So the first one...
Can we argue about them as you go down the list?
Sure, if you want to.
Okay, yeah, let's go point by point.
The first one is you want to have a positive experience.
Okay, there's not a whole lot to argue about there.
Okay.
And that's also really not easy to quantify.
Well, I have in parentheses here, you want to be entertained and have
Yeah,
fun.
and I was actually going to bring, this is the thing that I was talking about when we were talking right before this, where I was like, I have something to say, but I'm going to wait for the recording. That changes hourly when you're playing a game.
A fighting game, maybe. But there are other games that have a core gameplay loop. And that's like, your constant 15 minutes of I'm going from activity 1 to activity 2, and now I'm doing a boss fight. And now it's a challenging boss fight. Mm-hmm. Now there's a twist on the boss fight. Well, like that core gameplay loop has to change.
I don't want to quantify these.
Repeat. Has to repeat.
I don't want to quantify these, but I'm thinking just overall, I guess my thought was, and I'm saying you as in kind of me, I'm thinking my experience here, but I'm also thinking
you as the player.
Yeah, if I started playing a video game and I was hitting yes on these things and I turned off the game and I decided to go do something else or I was going to turn in for the night or whatever.
These things would bring you
Did
back.
I have a positive experience?
Sure. Okay.
Okay. The second one is you want the money and time spent to be worth the cost.
Minimum buy-in.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to win.
Boy, that's a tough one. I mean, yeah, everybody wants to win, but there's a certain amount of gratification in learning to win and then doing it.
But that's because we have the perspective that we do, right?
I don't think so. I think that's a pretty common human trait. If winning becomes so easy that it's just nothing, then it becomes mundane.
But do you want to win when you not even just Street Fighter? I'm talking about video games. I mean, I almost said you want to succeed, but I actually have something like that later in the bulleted points. But generally speaking, do you want to win versus do you want to lose? So if this was a question.
So if I only had the choice, if it was only black and white, then yes, of course.
Okay. The next one is you want choice and a freedom to explore the gameplay in a manner that befits your personality.
That one's tough.
That's a difficult point to hit.
I mean,
but yes.
But I mean, and like I said,
that in general, in video games in general, is an absolute.
It's something that I would
must.
imagine some people would want to try to do.
Yeah.
As opposed, okay. The next one, you want to be challenged, but feel as though you will or can eventually succeed.
I don't.
Now that sounds more like the point that I was trying to make when you said you want to win.
Okay.
You do want to be challenged because if there's no challenge, then winning is pointless.
Sure. Yeah. If you turned on a game and the moment you turned it on, you usually pressed X to go, and it was like, congratulations, and you got all these awards and confetti stuff. But you'd be like,
dopamine.
Oh, come on, man! You'd be like, I didn't even do anything, to get it.
It's like slots, dopamine. Mm-hmm. But
you put a quarter in, you push the
button. I got 2 more. The next one here is you want to be rewarded and recognized. That could be like achievements, trophies. You want to share your experience with others and feel part of a community of like-minded gamers.
Is that all 1 point?
Mm-hmm. You want to share your experiences with others and feel part of a community of like-minded people.
See, that depends because this is going to change for every single person, right? Every person has
Yeah.
their own
I mean, the thing is when I wrote this too, I wrote it for me, but my thing is if I'm going through here and I'm listing yes, do I want to win? Yes. Do I want the choice to explore the gameplay in a manner that befits my personality? Absolutely, I do. Do I want to eventually succeed but be challenged? Absolutely. If I switched that and I said no to these, do I want to win? No. Do I want to have a positive experience? No. Do I want to be rewarded, or do I want to be rewarded and recognized? No. I feel like if it was a yes and no situation, and that's kind of what you are experiencing in the game, then to me those would be the markers of not only if you're enjoying the game, but also, is the game fun? Or is it a good video game that you're playing?
At the very least, one of these points that you made, I think was the first one. Do you want to have a positive experience? Like that one's pretty amorphous. I don't think that I don't think you can really claim that as a point because nobody ever goes into anything and says, you know what, today I want to have a really awful time. Like, no, nobody does that.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
And I do want.
But if you were designing a video game, this isn't really what these points were for. But I'm thinking, if you're designing a video game, would these be things that you would want to try to hit?
Not the way that you've described them. No.
Okay.
The way that you would look at it as as a producer, a developer, a game developer, you would try to find those moments of joy, the things that make it so that you can't help but be compelled to come back to the game. And what causes that is exactly what Elon was saying earlier, the dopamine release. You need that thing that gives you that challenge that when you finally do overcome that hurdle, the game recognizes you. So that's an absolute must. And that you are rewarded, which is something else that I think you had mentioned in your points, right? So you the very first one you can't really use as a box to check because all of the other ones kind of you drill down through those and you end up with that one.
Well, given the theme or the topic of the video, would you agree or disagree, or what are your thoughts on if people weren't of these bulleted points that I had? Do you think what side of these points do you think the people that are hating on Street Fighter are on? Do you think they're having a great experience?
I think.
Do you think they want to?
They're trying to customize their own experience so that they get what they want out of it, and that is to have people agree with them. They want to be recognized. They want to think that their opinion of Street Fighter is correct and have that opinion echoed
for the people that are complaining.
The people that are complaining.
Because here's the thing that I don't think these bullet points only change from person to person. I think they change
from game to game
on an hourly basis. Right?
Why hourly?
So, like, do you want to have a positive experience? There are some days where there are some times where you kind of don't, right? Where it's like, oh man, I'm feeling kind of sad. I want to do something sad today. Like, I think, and this is the philosophy that the people who made Journey took, where it was like, oh, I'm feeling kind of down today. Maybe I just want to chill out and experience something that's not necessarily,
I still find that to be a positive experience, though. It reinforces the state that you want to be in.
And I'll emphasize too, since I'm not doing any overlays, that this is definitely, because I know that not just because you guys are disagreeing with me, but this is what I'm absolutely looking for. And that's why I said video games in particular, is that like if I feel like I'm playing, and the first thought that comes to mind is Resident Evil. Like when I'm playing that game, Resident Evil 2, when I was playing the remake, I was super scared. There were days where like I would live stream and I was literally just like, like, I know it's going to scare me. Like, there's nothing I can do.
But wait.
And that's not very positive.
But did you want it? Did you want to play the game? Did you
I did
like
want to
the
play
game?
the game.
You did?
Yeah.
That to me means the game in general was a positive experience for you.
Now, it
elicited a positive.
Is his want to play coming from a place of, oh, this is fun, or, oh, I need to finish this?
Either way.
Because I also want to win.
Either way. Because so that's a more qualitative, that's a more qualitative observance of this, whatever the relationship Justin had with Resident Evil 2.
It was scary.
Yeah. And like I said, that changes depending on who the person is and on their mood, right? And
I don't think that it's ever not positive. You always go into something with the idea of, I'm going to have X experience with the game, and if you get X experience out of that thing, out of that interaction with whatever it is positive. If you don't get it, then it is negative. Like, maybe I'm interpreting what you wrote in a different way than you meant it.
I think you're... I understand what you're saying. Sorry to cut you off.
Like, reinforcing... You're reinforcing what you want to get out of the game. To me, that means it's positive. If you're saying, I want to be made happier by playing this game, or I want to be made sadder by playing this game, like, those are a positive versus a negative experience, then I'm interpreting it incorrectly. I'm interpreting this statement differently than you've said it.
And this is what I wanted to say. I think you're coming at it from an expectation viewpoint.
That's what it sounds like to me, yes.
Yeah. I was looking at it differently.
Okay.
And I think you might have been thinking of it differently. And again, this comes down to everyone thinks of this shit
Everybody
differently.
thinks it completely differently.
But I do want to hit on two main points of your bullet points here, and it's you want choice and a freedom to explore the gameplay in a manner that benefits your personality. I disagree with that.
Really?
So without going too much into it, my brain sucks. So there are a lot of days where I don't want me. Like, I don't want to be me, and I don't want to think of me, right? So I want to be where the developer of this video game put me and do what the developer of this video game wants me to do, right? I don't think I'm alone in that. If I am, dope. If not, cool.
No, you're not.
So I think it goes back to what we were talking about like months and months ago, where I hate having choices in games where it's like everything you do affects the outcome of the game at the end. It's like, who cares? Just like tell me a story. Like, I'm not a choose your own adventure book kind of guy. I'm a epic novel. Like, give me what the developer wants and how they want it done, and I'll experience it.
Okay.
Right? That's point one. Point two, you want to share your experience with others and feel a part of a community of like-minded gamers. I think that's a very private thing.
It could be.
Right? Is being part of a community of like-minded gamers a great thing? Yes. But there's also, like we were talking about, solitude and...
Oh, I knew he was going to bring it up right before you got here. We were talking about
Yeah,
I watch movies by myself on purpose.
Because, exactly. Yeah. So, like, it's the same thing here, where it's like your experience can be a very personal and individual thing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like I have it, and I don't necessarily want to share it with others, right? So that's where I'm coming from.
That could potentially change. Like, any of those could potentially change from day to day. So making you choose a different game or a different experience.
Yeah, and same thing with Street Fighter. There are days where I want to watch somebody else play Street Fighter. There are other days where I don't want to watch somebody else play Street Fighter. And
you want to get in there yourself.
Yeah,
sure.
So, like I said, it changes on a mood basis, I think.
But to Justin's point, if you could tick most of those boxes on any particular day because you wanted those things, you'd probably have a successful product.
My issue too, or one of the points of the reason why I kind of wrote this is, one, it very much pertains to the way that I want to experience video games. But then the other thing I was thinking of is, we're definitely over time, so we're going to kind of wrap up really soon here. But I wanted to think about what kind of things would someone who genuinely doesn't like the game but feels like they're playing it anyway or is playing it. James Chin had an interesting point where I'm going to butcher his story, but he was describing this story where he traveled overseas somewhere, and there was a game that people really wanted to play, but no one was playing that game. They were all playing Street Fighter because they recognized that was the hot game. That was the game that if you were going to try to make it big, that was the game you needed to play, even though that community of people didn't really like the game, And so when I made this list, I was thinking, I wonder if the people who genuinely don't like it, like not the people who are like being like facetious about it, but the people who don't like it, I wonder when they play, are they just losing all the time? So they might not be having good experience. Do they want to win, but they're not? Are they people who want to be recognized and rewarded by getting diamond or master or whatever, but because of some of these other points, they're losing? And then here's another one, the last one. Do they want to share their experience? So maybe they're having a negative experience, so then they, as you mentioned, the echo chamber, they're trying to find other people that hate on the game as well, because that's what they're experiencing.
Because they need the reinforcement.
So this list isn't exactly like, this is what I feel like negative players are saying, but I'm thinking, like, if these things were no's and you had enough people who were experiencing that were logging in every day and then constantly playing something that they were losing and failing in because of netcode, because of character balance, because of whatever, then to something you mentioned earlier, you're going to go to the only platform that you have that you have a voice on, which is, whatever, social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, and you're going to be like, hey, other people, like, this sucks, right? This game is terrible, right? And then you end up in those situations where it's like, nope, I actually think it's pretty good. Well, it's only because you play Akuma and you're winning a lot, so I guess the game is fun for you, and then it becomes the battle. Right, or whatever. So.
And there's also like something to be said about the state of humanity, where everyone wants to be in a room winking at each other, and then the one person that doesn't wink at the other people just gets their ass kicked and tossed out. So
that's a really weird image. I've never heard of being in a room and winking at other people.
Well, like, I mean that figuratively.
I know, but I've never heard that.
And honestly, that's also a conversation that's been had when I was a musician. It's everyone's in in cahoots with everyone else, and everyone's kind of, smelling everyone else's farts and saying, "Oh, this is great," and then one person says, "I don't think this is so great."
You're out.
Yeah, exactly. So take that for what you want.
You lost the game.
I don't want to necessarily wrap you guys up on purpose and say any final thoughts. But is there anything else you guys want to say about just like esports in general that we've been talking about, Street Fighter? Anything about the negativity as far as like a lasting message?
I think it's gone about the wrong way as far as like the esports sizing of Street Fighter.
Okay.
And I think that the negativity has gone about in the wrong way. In
Yeah.
fact, there are some people who are out there saying, stop talking about this bad stuff that you don't like.
Yeah.
And I want to say, screw them. If you don't like it, talk about it.
Sure.
Yeah, and
If you like it, also talk about it. Like, you should do both.
yeah, and
You
this
you just don't need to scream it.
and this goes back to what we were saying. There are people who talk shit about it and then go back to playing it.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, there's
a
got
lot
to
of
be.
people do that.
There's gotta
and,
be a lot
and
of
there's
people who
also
do
there's also people who don't play it who just want to talk shit about it because they want to.
I think
make themselves feel better for a slight.
I think on
amount
the
of time.
Event Hubs podcast, I was listening to a portion where I think it was Catalyst and John were talking about like they didn't reveal any names, but they were like, there's some people that will like talk a lot of crap about Street Fighter, and then they'll check their CFN profile and they're still playing.
Yep.
It's like, I mean, but it could be to your point. It's like you dislike it and you're just like, hey, I want to talk about it. I mean, I feel like this has kind of been like a really interesting episode for us.
That's not what I said. I said, if you don't like it, talk about it.
Well, these people they don't like it.
Yeah, I know.
And they are talking about it.
Exactly.
And then they're going back to playing the game.
That's fine.
Yeah.
You can not like something and continue to enjoy parts of it. I mean, I'm assuming that's why those people are going back to play. But you can enjoy parts of it, not like something, and go talk about that. I don't think that it's appropriate to say you're not allowed to talk about this thing because you don't like it. And that's the kind of negativity that I have seen and I disagree with vehemently. I don't think that just because you dislike something, your voice is removed. Like maybe you shouldn't shout quite as loud as you do because maybe you're just an annoyance and you don't really understand the context of what you're saying or where you're saying it.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna get into. It's like, how can someone have an opinion on something that they don't take a part of? Granted, that's a little bit more general, and I do know that like they probably experienced Street Fighter V and they don't like it, blah blah blah, whatever. Why
would you continue to subject yourself to something that you really don't
exactly?
like?
And to that same point, nothing can be gained from not being constructive.
You mean there is something to be gained from being constructive?
Yes. Nothing can be gained from just shouting into the void, "I hate X," and that's it. And then just bitching about it and how much you hate it, but not going into specifics.
Yeah.
And I
so
think
if you say the net code sucks, that doesn't give anybody anything to work on.
well, it kind of does. But anyway, just because like, oh, the netcode's bad, maybe we should fix that. But it goes back to then the whole thing I was saying about everyone in the same room winking. It's like everyone's like, Street Fighter 5 sucks, right? Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah.
Sorry, I forgot to wink.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say is I think the way they're going.
4 seconds.
I think the way they're going about esports. I'm not going to finish in 4 seconds, especially now. Or maybe okay, I'm done. No, I'm kidding. I think the way they're going about esports is wrong. Where I think they need to build up the core audience first. And you might be saying, "Oh, but they did build up a core audience. Look at Street Fighter 4." That most of that core audience stayed with Street Fighter 4. I think they need to go about much in the same way that other content creators, the successful ones, go about it. It's make something that is for everyone, right? And then out of that, you're gonna get a good base of players that will enjoy the esports aspect of it. But just making it straight for to me, admitting that they're like, we're going full on esports with this is a mistake.
There's a lot of people you're like not including.
Yeah,
in that
you're going to
list.
alienate a lot of the people, and a lot of those people are the ones that are going to give you the most numbers.
But realize that what you just said was make something for everyone, and that is the experiment that was Street Fighter V.
Was it?
I
Yes.
agree. We're gonna have to wrap up here. That seems weird. Look at that. I've never seen the timer do that.
01,
It's like this
01,
weird
10.
hour thing. We've talked about that before, and we can explore a little bit more. But
We've been going for one day.
It's hopefully to anybody who does listen to the full things. It's a very long listen, an hour. It's a very long list.
Sorry about that.
But there was actually one particular person.
Sort of
I forget their name, so I'm sorry. But there's
I
one
thought you were
particular comment that I know we got on the podcast that was like, hey, these podcasts kind of help me get through the work shifts at night. And I was somebody who used to listen to podcasts. I still do. Like when I used to work my overnight shift, I would listen to podcasts. And so to just be like cranking through work and be able to listen to people talk, hopefully intelligently and constructively about a particular subject.
So they weren't listening to this podcast.
I think that'd be kind of cool. So to that person, if you listen to this.
This one's for you.
Yeah. All right.
And all the rest of you as well, because we make something for everyone.
Do we?
I mean, that's what.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the whole point of the podcast.
That's why we do this.
That's where.
Oh.
All right. All right. We're out of here. Have a good one.